Shocking courtroom revelation. Ned's stunning confession changes everything. In Willow's trial. In a stunning turn of events that has left Port Charles reeling, Ned Quarterman's dramatic courtroom appearance has completely upended Willow Tate's trial and exposed a web of deceit that threatens to destroy multiple lives. What began as a desperate defense against murder allegations has evolved into an explosive revelation that reveals the true gunman behind Drew Cain's shooting. And it's not Willow. The trial everyone was waiting for. The second trial of Willow 8 had become the most anticipated legal event in Port Charles. After her first ordeal, Willow found herself facing yet another courtroom battle with the weight of potential decades in prison hanging over her head. The stakes were impossibly high and everyone in her corner, from her attorney Alexis Davis to the determined detective Harrison Chase, was working frantically to prove her innocence. Chase, in particular, had been operating in the shadows, piecing together evidence and searching for the missing puzzle piece that could finally set Willow free. His personal investment in the case was undeniable, but his dedication never wavered. Every lead he pursued, every witness he questioned, every shred of evidence he uncovered was designed for one purpose: to prove that Willow did not pull the trigger that night. "I know you didn't do this," Chase had told Willow during one of their private conversations. "And I'm going to find the real evidence to prove it to everyone else." His words carried the weight of a man determined to right a terrible wrong, no matter what it took. An unexpected arrival. The courtroom was tense as testimony continued throughout the proceedings. Prosecutors presented their case with conviction, laying out circumstantial evidence designed to convince the jury of Willow's guilt. But as the tension mounted and it seemed like the noose around Willow's neck was tightening, an unexpected figure suddenly appeared in the courtroom. Ned Quartermain, wheeled in on a wheelchair, still recovering from the massive heart attack that had nearly claimed his life. The collective gasp that echoed through the courthouse was audible. Ned had been in a coma, fighting for his life in General Hospital, barely clinging to existence just weeks before. His appearance was shocking enough, but what he was about to reveal would shake the entire foundation of Port Charles society. The judge looked confused. "Mr. Quartermain, shouldn't you be resting?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. Ned's face was pale but resolute. "Your Honor, I need to speak. I can't stay silent any longer." His voice was weak but determined. The confession that changed everything. What Ned revealed next stunned the courtroom into silence. In a moment that will be replayed and discussed for years to come, Ned Quartermain confessed to shooting Drew Cain. Not Willow, not anyone else. Ned himself had fired the fatal shot. The revelation sent shock waves through the gallery. Willow's face went pale with a mixture of relief and shock. Alexis Davis sat frozen, likely already calculating the legal implications. The prosecutors' faces showed a mixture of disbelief and concern. Their entire case had just collapsed. "I did it," Ned said, his voice carrying the weight of the truth finally being spoken aloud. "I shot Drew, not because I wanted to, but because I had to protect my family. Willow is innocent. She never did this. The confession hung in the air like a bomb that had just detonated. Everything the prosecution had built their case upon now seemed hollow and misguided. The unraveling of Drew's crimes. But Ned's confession didn't stop there. As if the courtroom needed another shock, Ned continued his testimony by exposing a litany of crimes and schemes that Drew had orchestrated. The details he revealed painted a picture of a man far more sinister and calculated than anyone had previously understood. Drew is the real criminal here, Ned declared, his voice growing stronger despite his weakened physical condition. He framed innocent people. He stole from my family. He threatened everyone around him to get what he wanted. He left me to die after the shooting. Ned's revelations were methodical and devastating. He detailed how Drew had manipulated situations, how he had orchestrated schemes that had hurt countless people, and how his actions had set off a chain reaction of misery throughout Port Charles. It became clear that while Ned had committed the act of shooting Drew, the congressman himself had created the circumstances that led to that moment. When I realized what Drew had done, when I saw how he was destroying everything and everyone around him, I couldn't stand by anymore, Ned explained. But I never wanted Willow to pay for my actions. Swift justice and complicated consequences. Within hours of his confession, Ned Quartermain was arrested. Armed police officers took him into custody right there in the courthouse, placing handcuffs on a man who had just saved an innocent woman from a potential life sentence. It was a bitter irony that didn't escape anyone in the room. Yet, as Ned was led away, Detective Chase moved quickly on the evidence Ned had provided. The confession about Drew's crimes opened up investigations into financial fraud, theft, manipulation, and a host of other offenses. Drew Kane, the congressman, who had seemed untouchable, was now facing his own serious legal troubles. You're under investigation for multiple counts of fraud, theft, and conspiracy, Chase informed Drew. Satisfaction evident in his voice. Ned's testimony has given us everything we need. The news hit Drew like a physical blow. The man who had orchestrated so much chaos now found himself on the other side of the law, facing consequences he had never anticipated. Willow's relief and complicated justice. For Willow, the courtroom decision was swift. With Ned's confession and the exposure of the actual circumstances surrounding the shooting, the charges against her were dismissed. She was free. After months of uncertainty, fear, and the constant shadow of potential imprisonment, Willow Tate finally had her life back. I never thought this day would come, Willow said to Chase outside the courthouse, tears streaming down her face. I thought I was going to lose everything. Chase placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You're innocent. That's what matters now. Justice has finally been served. Yet there was a bittersweet quality to Willow's freedom. While she had been exonerated, it was Ned, a man with his own complicated motivations and a history with her and everyone else in Port Charles, who had to take the legal consequences. The question of justice became more nuanced. Everyone had to grapple with the moral complexity of a situation where the guilty party had taken responsibility to protect the innocent. The ripple effects, the shock waves from Ned's confession and Drew's exposure will continue to reverberate through Port Charles for months to come. Families are being forced to reckon with the lies and manipulations they've been subjected to. Alliances are shifting as people process what they've learned about Drew's true nature and Ned's actions. For Chase, there's vindication in his relentless pursuit of truth, but also the knowledge that his investigation has resulted in convicting a man he respected, even as it has freed an innocent woman. The moral complexities of the legal system have never been more evident. The second trial of Willow Tate will be remembered not as a trial where guilt or innocence was determined through traditional legal evidence, but as the moment when hidden truths exploded into the light and forced everyone in Port Charles to reckon with a reality far more complicated than anyone had imagined. Next, we will learn about the shocking twists gripping Port Charles in the wake of Mayor Laura Spencer's dramatic re-election victory. In a tense showdown at the bustling polling station on election night, Laura Spencer confronted Professor Dalton with unyielding fury. After learning he had maliciously framed her beloved grandson Rocco Falconer for sabotaging a critical research lab, the exchange quickly spiraled into a heated verbal clash, drawing crowds of curious onlookers, including journalists with cameras rolling and reporters scribbling notes under the harsh fluorescent lights. Overwhelmed by a mother's instinctive rage and the weight of years spent shielding her family from harm, Laura delivered a resounding slap to Dalton's cheek, the sound echoing like a thunderclap amid the stunned silence. Within moments, smartphones captured every angle and the clip exploded across social media platforms with hashtags like Lori slaps Dalton and Port Charles. Drama trending nationwide by the hour. Major news networks looped the footage relentlessly, framing it as a potential political catastrophe that could unravel Laura's hard-fought campaign against her cunning opponent. She confided to close allies that night that she worried this impulsive act might give the mayoral seat to her rival on a gilded tray, tarnishing her reputation as a steady leader in the eyes of undecided voters. Yet, in a stunning reversal that no pundit predicted, the public embraced Laura's raw display of familial devotion, hailing her as the fierce guardian every family deserves. This grandmotherly firestorm not only rallied her core supporters but also swayed moderates who saw authenticity over polished restraint, propelling her to a resounding landslide win on November amid cheers and confetti showers outside City Hall. For added depth, consider how this moment echoed Laura's storied past of bold stands. Much like her interventions in community crises over the years, proving once again that her unfiltered passion resonates deeply in a city weary of faceless bureaucracy. But as the echoes of celebration faded into the crisp November morning of the Laura's triumph curdled into a nightmare of unimaginable proportions, positioning her as the prime suspect in a chilling high-profile slaying that threatens to eclipse her political legacy. Enter Jen Sidwell, the shadowy corporate titan whose empire thrives on ruthless precision and zero tolerance. 4 loose ends. A man whose boardroom battles have left rivals in ruins and whose influence now seeps into port. Charles' underbelly like ink and water. Sidwell with his impeccable suits and steely gaze that could freeze. Negotiations solid didn't merely eliminate a threat, he engineered a masterpiece of deception blending surgical intellect with glacial malice. Mere hours after Laura's victory parade wound through the waterfront, Sidwell cornered Professor Dalton in a dimly lit warehouse on the city's outskirts. The air thick with the metallic tang of impending doom. A single muffled gunshot rang out, silencing Dalton forever, his body crumpling amid scattered lab reports that hinted at their illicit calibrations. Sidwell's motive burned clear. Dalton's reckless framing of Rocco had ignited unwanted scrutiny from law enforcement and the incoming mayor, spotlighting their clandestine schemes to manipulate local research grants for personal gain. In Sidwell's world, liabilities aren't managed. They're excised without remorse. A philosophy honed from decades of climbing corporate ladders slick with betrayal. The true stroke of diabolical brilliance lay in the aftermath. Sidwell meticulously staged the scene to lure Laura directly to the discovery, timing it perfectly with an anonymous tip that played on her lingering concern for the professor's safety. She arrived just as dawn broke, stepping into a tableau of horror that media hounds would devoured. Alton's lifeless form sprawled accusingly mere days after her public outburst against him. This frame-up weaponizes Laura's greatest strength, her unwavering love for family, turning it into a noose around her neck. The viral slap footage now serves as damning evidence of premeditated rage, amplified by expert talking heads dissecting her violent tendencies on morning shows. Sidwell's plot unravels like a chess grandmaster's endgame, where every pawn, from forged clues to planted witnesses, advances his agenda of corporate dominance, leaving viewers to marvel at the cold calculus of a villain who anticipates every human emotion and twists it to his advantage. At the epicenter of this spiraling crisis stands Britt Westman, the once notorious doctor whose life hangs in a precarious balance, forcing her into an agonizing crossroads that could either redeem her soul or seal her fate in secrecy. Britt, with her sharp intellect and haunted eyes reflecting battles against her own genetic curse, inadvertently became the sole eyewitness to Sidwell's cold execution of Dalton. Hidden in the warehouse shadows as the deed unfolded in stark, unforgiving detail, she watched the bullet fly, heard the final gasp, and glimpsed the calculated cleanup, making her the lynch pin who could shatter Sidwell's facade and exonerate Laura with a single testimony in court. Yet this knowledge comes at a devastating cost. Sidwell wields absolute power over Britt's lifeline, the experimental Huntington's treatment infusions that stave off her disease's relentless advance, administered through his private medical network that no one else can access. 2. Step forward and testify would mean instant retaliation, Sidwell cutting off her supply, dooming her to a swift, agonizing decline that medical experts warned could unfold in months, leaving her daughter and unfinished business in tatters. Conversely, choosing silence to preserve her fragile existence condemns Laura to a lifetime behind bars for a crime born of circumstance. While young Rocco, already scarred by losses like His mother's coma and the shadows of his unconventional origins, faces the heartbreak of his grandmother's absence during his formative years. This quandary transcends mere ethics, probing the depths of Brit's transformation from the calculating Brit who orchestrated the embryo theft from Lulu Spencer over a decade ago, birthing Rocco in a web of deception that scarred the Falconeri family. Back in that scheme, painted her as irredeemable, a villain, rang in chaos. But years of quiet atonement through selfless acts and their and tentative bonds with those she wronged have chipped away at that armor. Now the ultimate test demands she risk everything to mend the fractures she once caused, potentially sacrificing her vitality to safeguard the lineage she indirectly shaped. Imagine the internal turmoil, sleepless nights weighing legacy against longevity, flashbacks to her villainous youth clashing with visions of a heroic stand. If Brit embraces this path, it forges a profound redemption, elevating her from soap opera antagonist to symbol of sacrificial grace. Failure to do so, however, might confine her to eternal whispers of what could have been, underscoring the show's theme that true change demands the highest stakes. 4. Devoted General Hospital fans spanning generations, this unfolding saga evokes an eerie parallel to Laura's traumatic origins, mirroring the David Hamilton storyline with inverted cruelty that amplifies the pain of history, repeating itself in the most personal ways. In that iconic arc, a vulnerable teenage Laura trapped in an abusive relationship with the manipulative older David Hamilton acted in desperate self-defense during a confrontation that ended in his death. Her hands trembling as she grappled with the aftermath in a fog of fear and confusion. Her devoted mother, Leslie Weber, stepped in with heartbreaking resolve, confessing to the crime to shield her daughter from scandal and prison. A maternal shield that allowed Laura to rebuild her life amid the Weber family's unwavering support. Fast forward to today, and Sidwell perverts this very dynamic of protective love into a tool of destruction, framing the now seasoned Mayor Laura for assaulting and slaying Dalton, a man she struck not in rage, but to avenge her grandson's tarnished future, echoing the public spectacle that once nearly broke her. The generational echo is poignant. What saved Laura as a frightened youth now ensnares her as a pillar of society. Her instinctive defense of Rocco, twisted by planted evidence and sensational headlines into a portrait of vengeful instability, delve deeper and the narrative layers reveal how poor Charles' cycles of trauma bind its residents. Laura's evolution from that scared girl to a mayor championing justice now risks reversal, dragging her through interrogations and trial scrutiny that dredge up faded scandals. The inversion stings with poetic injustice. Leslie's lie preserved a family then, but Sidwell's scheme fractures one now, forcing Dante and others to question loyalties amid resurfacing doubts. This haunting callback isn't mere nostalgia. It's a masterclass in serialized storytelling, using past wounds to heighten present stakes, reminding us that in Port Charles, redemption is fragile and old ghosts never truly rest. As General Hospital's spoilers intensify. For this pivotal week, the threads of conspiracy and consequence weave a tapestry of high drama that reshapes the city's power structure in irreversible ways. Sidwell's machinations extend beyond mere murder, culminating in the passage of Measure C, a sly ballot measure that greenlights eminent domain seizures, handing his conglomerate control over sunny Corinthos vital waterfront piers essential for his import operations and underground dealings. The indomitable mob boss, weathered by assassinations, car bombs, and federal probes, finds himself outmaneuvered not by bullets, but by democratic sleight of hand. His protests, drowned out as city council rubber, stamps the takeover amid cheers for economic progress. Laura, still reeling from the body discovery, braces for swift arrest on murder charges. Her office swarmed by detectives combing files for any overlooked connection to Dalton's shady dealings. Dante Falconer, the principled cop and Rocco's father, grapples with the gut-wrenching duty of leading the probe against his ex-wife, Lulu's mother. Torn between badge and blood ties that strain his already complex family dynamics, compounding the emotional minefield. Nathan West, resurrected from a presumed grave in a twist that stunned the QCS crew, joins the force, his return injecting fresh tension as he navigates loyalties to Laura from his detective days while uncovering Sidwell's fingerprints. Britt, meanwhile, bears the colossal burden of this crossroads alone. Her choice, rippling outward to dictate not just one woman's freedom but the fate of a fractured clan and the exposure of a corporate predator. Whatever path she treads, whispered confession or resolute quiet, will etch her indelibly into the annals of daytime lore. A defining moment that could heal old rifts or deepen the abyss. In Port Charles, where alliances shatter like glass and Dylans lurk in every shadow, this saga promises fireworks that keep viewers glued, pondering the cost of truth in a world built on secrets.